Hello. So, our first speaker this afternoon is streaming in from Massachusetts on the East Coast of America. Mike Ryan is a user research director at Liberty Mutual Insurance, where he works on a variety of mobile and desktop applications for sales and service tasks. Mike has been working in user experience since 1995 for companies including Thomson Reuters, HP, Staples, Welch, and Kids. Fun fact: Mike is an avid reader and read a whopping 400 books in 2021. That is impressive. Over to you, Mike.
Hello. I hope you guys had a nice lunch and a nice quiz. So let's get started. I will share my screen. Move up there. All right. Okay, cool. So welcome to Give Me the Quick version, using one-pagers to communicate research findings far and wide. So you'll find this to be a pretty practical session for research findings. You can find me on Twitter as Ryan Interactive. This deck and some resources that go with are already posted up there for you. And also, FYI, there will be cats in this presentation. So I'm based in south of Boston in Massachusetts in the United States. So I'm north of where Melissa is and very east of where Tian and Jason are. And here it's still Thursday. So let's start with some hypotheticals. Feel free to share your thoughts in the chat. So can you present the findings from last week's study now? Who, me? That is Zeus. That is my cat, Zeus. He fits, he sits. Or this. Great news, team. Everyone loved the new design. I've definitely felt this one. I don't know what you were watching. Or this. Can you send me all the research you have ever done on secondary CTAs for a meeting tomorrow? That's my other cat, Angela. She can stand like a human. So these are some typical scenarios that used to stress me out as a UX researcher. But I was inspired by a marketing colleague that I was working with, who was really effective at socializing her findings. It was amazing. And one of her big tools was one-page summaries or one-pagers. So I created my own and experimented with a couple different approaches. And then the pandemic hit, and sharing findings got a little more complicated and more important. So I decided to put more effort into my UX research one-pager. But what did I want my one-pager to do? So at minimum, I wanted it to address the three scenarios I just mentioned. So I want high-level findings ready for a general audience. So you can present those findings from the study last week. You'll have it ready to go. I wanted to improve comprehension of findings. So if the design bombed in usability, stakeholders should know that. And gather findings across studies quickly. So I'll be able to actually respond to that request on secondary CTAs and not freak out about it. But how would I know that my one-pager is effective? Well, let's do some research. So I decided to do a UXR study on my one-pagers with people at my company. So like any good UX researcher, I started with defining my goals before I figured out what method I was going to use. So what I did was I wanted to create a couple different versions of a one-pager with a different layout, some different content, different levels of detail, and then get reactions from representative users, and then see how well they communicate the findings, in 1 minute or less. So if somebody scans it, like what can they get from it? Think about what is the right amount of content, and think about what content is the most helpful to my stakeholders. So I also needed a case study to have findings to put into these one-pager designs. So this was a study that we did on Ryanair, where participants did tasks about booking and updating flights and stuff. But all you need to know is like these are the findings that we put into the different designs. So let's look at some of the designs. So there were three. Design A has methodology, positive and negative findings, some headers and over a short description of the findings, and then some screenshots that illustrate what those findings were. Design B also had methodology, but this time the findings were framed as broad insights, so like kind of big things, and then top findings, and no header, just a short description, and then the screenshots again. Design C was kind of the kitchen sink one. So executive summary, goals, methodology, screening criteria, and then the just three findings with the screenshots, and also members of the team. So these are the ones that we tested. So I tested it as an unmoderated user Zoom test. I had 43 participants, and what I had people do is they did this task here on one of the three designs, load balanced, and then there were some questions comparing so then they would see the other two and compare them. So one of the things was with the design that they saw, how many of the top findings could they recall, unaided, and then showing them the other two designs, like some questions comparing them, and then there's like a rank order of the content items. I want to make sure to get a representative sample. So my stakeholders are going to be using these. So I wanted to get feedback on a bunch of different functions of people that would be consuming these findings. I am not the user here. The user researchers aren't really the user here. It's our stakeholders. Okay, so what did we find in that study? So as usual, there were parts of each design that worked and parts of each design that didn't. Overall, they found them helpful, and they liked different parts of each. Design C, the one that had a lot of content on it, had the best recall of the top findings. But what was funny is all that information that was on the left column, they ignored, and then they remembered the stuff that was on the right column. In terms of secondary findings, A and B did better. And most participants were interested in having the goals and an executive summary in there, as well as the findings and screenshots that were actually helpful. They didn't find those screenshots helpful. And most participants preferred findings to be labeled as positive or negative for clear direction, or broad findings with neutral framing. And I'll get into that in a minute. And similarly, some wanted like headings with the short paragraphs, and others just wanted a bulleted list so they can get more findings in there. So it's all about trade-offs as usual. So this was our final design. So we have an executive summary, we have goals, we have positive and negative findings in a bulleted list with some bolding. We have a link to the full report, and then we have some screenshots that illustrate what was tested, not trying to show like what the finding was talking about, but just like to show like this is the thing that we tested here. So for Ryanair, like the flow is like, here's the flight search, here's a seat picker, and here's the flight picker. Okay, so guidelines. So what worked for my team may not necessarily work for yours. Everybody's different. So you need to cater it to your team. So keep it short and clear. The title of the study, the date, the goals, and executive summary, I think we're good. Helpful screenshots only. And then, so the positive and negative findings or top findings or neutral framing, like think about what kind of relationship you have with your stakeholders. If you're like new going in there and maybe disrupting things, then you want to go with neutral framing. If it's a team that you've worked a lot with, then they can handle the criticism. Scannable headlines with a short explanation or a bulleted list. So similar to the last one, if you have a team that you've been working with a lot, the bulleted list is probably good. And if it's a new team, then more explanation. A link to the full report, maybe some metrics. Careful with this because I'm talking about mainly qualitative research, but sometimes people want to get an idea of like how many of the participants. Next steps and recommendations you may want to have. I usually don't put those in myself because we have different roles and I'm specifically a researcher, so I like to give them what the findings are and then work with the designer and work with the content strategist and PO on what they should do next. And then no methodology. So stakeholders are not interested in the methodology unless they don't like the findings, then they want to know about the methodology. So I have a template that is posted on Twitter in PowerPoint and Google Slides that you can grab. So I also wanted to tell you about like how it's been going. Like, so I've been doing this for 2 years, over 100 of these one-pagers. So what has happened here? So the expected uses, like, so I feel like I achieved my goals. I can share across a general audience in their preferred platform, make this a PDF, email it, post it on Slack, whatever. So that works. Meet your stakeholders where they are. Help teams understand and internalize findings. I found that one of the happiest things that you can hear as a researcher is your stakeholders articulating your findings correctly without any like coaching from you. That was happening more, so that's awesome. And then it was easy to kind of like gather the one-pagers together on similar studies for those kinds of requests. But there are also some pretty good unexpected uses for these one-pagers. Like these things are great, I tell you. So cheat sheet. So what that is I do a lot of studies. If I did a study last month or 3 months ago, I'm not going to remember. So if I'm in a meeting with a team and the findings are relevant, I'll open that up and have it on my screen, and then I can refer to it and sound like I'm smart. Post an ideation session board. So like when we do design sessions, like in Mural, I'll just post it like on the Mural, and then everybody has the findings to refer to. Drop in the meeting chat. I do this all the time. We're doing demos or something like that, and somebody mentions something or a study, I'll just put those one-pagers in there. Your end of the year review of your team or of yourself, it's easy. Like I put them all in a master deck. So I have all my one-pagers from last year and the year before. And it makes a low-tech research repository. So you just go into that deck with them all and search by keyword, and you can find stuff pretty well that way. So to finish off, I wanted to get a little meta with the one-pager. To summarize that, Yeah, and that's it. So thank you for your attention and your warm welcome here. Put your questions in the chat or hit me up on Twitter. As I said, I'm Mike Ryan, and links to the presentation and templates are already posted at Ryan Interactive on Twitter. So thank you very much.